Hey guys, welcome to the Type 1 Lifting Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. So this episode is from a podcast called Freewheelin with Carden. She is a disabilities advocate and super great person to talk to. This is actually my first podcast I was on instead of doing the opposite. So I hope you guys enjoy and kind of hear my stories and go from there, right? Have a great day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Type 1 Lifting Podcast. I'm doing my first ever contest for this podcast. All you need to do is to enter in this podcast is three things. Subscribe to the channel, leave a 5-star review, and also write a review. It's going to be starting with this episode with Jake Marconi all the way down to the end of September. What I'll do is I'll pick someone at random, and you'll be getting some free Type 1 lifting gear. So all you need to do, like I said before, subscribe to the channel, leave a 5-star review, and also write a review. Best of luck, guys. Super excited for this episode. Have a good one. I know this thing already has a pop filter. Let me guess.
Hey, and welcome to Freewheelin with Carden podcast. I'm your host, Carden Wyckoff, wheelchair warrior and disability advocate based in Atlanta, Georgia. On this podcast, we share stories from people with various disabilities and help break down barriers for the disability community so that we can build allyship and a more inclusive world. If you like what you hear on the episode today, please rate, review, and follow this podcast and share it with a friend. I'm giving a shout out to my friends at iAccess Life. It's a mobile app that rates and reviews places on the built environment to break down barriers and transparency on the bathrooms, interior, parking, and any time that you go into a new place. You can find the mobile app on Google Play and Apple App Store. Use the referral code CARDEN, my name, CARDEN, when signing up. Today's guest is Tom Lennon. Since being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 35, creator and personal trainer Tom Lennon decided that he wasn't going to let his devastating news keep him from reaching his fitness goals. Through his t-shirt company, Tom wanted to send the message that you can still do amazing things, even if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Working in a local children's hospital already, Tom would see children come in on a daily basis that were newly diagnosed with the disease and who were already living with it. He then decided that he wanted to donate a portion of his t-shirt proceeds to the Children's Diabetes Foundation in hopes of making a difference. I hope you enjoyed the episode today, and let me know what you think. You can DM me on Instagram at Freewheelin with Carden. Enjoy! Hey, Tom, thanks so much for joining the podcast tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Actually, it's funny. I'm usually the person that's asking all the questions, and now this is the first time actually being interviewed. So I'm really thankful for being a guest on your show, and I'm looking forward to this tonight.
Nice. It's always fun to be on the other seat. I've done a few podcasts before where I'm being interviewed, and yeah, it's a weird feeling, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I think when you have a story that you're really passionate about, you can really, you realize you blink and an hour has gone by and you're like, how did I talk for so long? But when you're just, a lot about the topic and you're passionate about it, it comes from the heart.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about you tonight and your journey with type 1 diabetes and how you advocate for your community and create that inclusion and belonging. So do you want to, I'll give you the floor and you can talk all about your journey.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm originally from Massachusetts and my wife is from Georgia. And so when we got married, she got a position back in Georgia. So we moved down south. And then I was looking for jobs. Before I even moved down to Georgia, I started drinking like a lot of water. And this is when I was 35, just about turning 35 years old, which is not really typical. It's usually you'll see diabetes coming around in adolescence or younger ages. And so while I was transitioning down to Georgia, I was actually drinking a lot of water, really skinny. Maybe my parents were like questioning like, what's going on with you? And then finally moved down to Georgia and got a position at a children's hospital in the emergency department. And at this time, my wife hasn't seen me for over a month, and she, we go to this pool party and she looks at me and says, man, you are really, really skinny. And I didn't really realize it until I looked in the mirror and I was like, God, I look like really skinny. Cause typically I'm a bigger gentleman, and when I look in the mirror, it's just like I don't know what happened to me. And so when I got hired at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, I did this pre-employment screening, and they have this thing called Strong for Life where you can do blood work. It's optional. You don't have to do it. So they do the blood work and just see what may need an improvement or whatnot. And so I was like, sure, let's go. And because I'm always curious and geek out on blood work and, fitness and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So
why not?
It's free exactly. Screening. Yeah, it's free. Yeah, it was free too. So I can't complain. So when the nurse took my blood and got the readings, she was like, And she looks at me and says, are you feeling okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, what's the deal? And then she asked me, what did you have for breakfast? And I was like, 2 bowls of cereal, like what I typically do. And so she's like, and you are feeling perfectly fine right now? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And so she checked my blood. She told me my blood sugar was 390 points, which is like ridiculously high for anybody. Cause the typical range of your normal blood sugar is like 80 to, some people say 120 or 130. And that's like the typical range for a normal person. But mine was at like 390. And she's like, well, this could be just a glitch. It could be just the system. Why don't you go home and go to CVS and get a glucometer, they're like $20. And so, and do a 12-hour fast and see what happens. And I was like, all right, let's try it out. And then she said, reach out to me immediately if it's like still high. And I was like, okay. So I did a 12-hour fast, and then I checked my blood sugar, and it was 271. It's pretty funny. Those two numbers, the 390 and 271, I don't think I'm ever gonna forget at all, because it's like, this is when I first started realizing, like, man, I'm a diabetic, and I didn't really put two and two together until the nurse says, "Listen, you really need to go to an endocrinologist like yesterday." And so I went to an endocrinologist. He did my blood work, and he told me that, I got the official diagnosis of, hey, you're a type 1 diabetic now at the age of 35, which I know was insane for me. I never really expected, this to happen to me. And so now I was pretty much learning how to do shots, take insulin, and it was just like a whole curveball. Like, even my wife was like, didn't know what to do. So.
And how did you feel during all of this? I mean, was it scary? Was it like you're ready to take this on? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was. Well, I'm the type of guy that would take everything and like screw it, just do it, just roll with it. And I was shocked that this actually happened to me. But I was like, well, since I have it, I might as well, just go along with it and just learn how to live with this, because it's going to be there for the rest of my life. And I was learning it, trying to learn as much as I can, because, my endocrinologist didn't really help me out. And so I was reaching out to, other diabetics on Instagram, or just talking to other people that I worked at the hospital up in Boston, just asking them questions. And and it's funny, because just when I first started out, when you take your blood, you have this a little thing called the lancet, where it's this little needle that punctures through your finger, where you can draw the blood and actually get the blood sample to read what your blood sugar is. And so they have a number on the lancet. And so I thought that was how many times you have to use it. But no, that's the amount of pressure that the needle actually gives. So the higher the number, the higher the pressure it is. And so I was like, I didn't know. And finally someone told me at work, they're like, hey, that's for the amount of pressure that puts in for the needle. And I was like, oh. So it's pretty much a learning, a whole learning curve, the whole time, because I just got no information whatsoever. And it's funny because, well, it's funny because typically when someone has a high blood sugar like that, they could go into, diabetic ketoacidosis, where, they pee out your sugar, and you could cure ketones, and which is very bad. You can be in an ICU. I have never had that happen to me, or they never sent me to a hospital with that. So they said, just try to manage it when I first started. So I was, lucky I didn't have to go to an ICU for that for a couple of days.
Right. Yeah. And thinking about where you came up with that, and where you learned that attitude of just roll with it. Is that something that was taught to you? Is that something that you were surrounded by, your peers? I don't think that's an attitude that's generally just acquired or native.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty laid back, and my wife kind of doesn't like that. But it's I don't know. It's just my dad does the same thing too, so I probably got it from him. He's just all right, well, let's go and do it. So
yeah,
I think it was kind of with genetics, but I always want to learn something new or do something new. So I was and I also read a book from Richard Branson called Screw It, Just Do It. So that was another book that, helped me out with that too. It's just he had all these things that are going on, and he almost said no to most of it, but then he said, screw it, just do it. And then something good happened out of it. So
nice. So you're connecting with other diabetics and having the help from those at your work. When did you kind of make that connection to want to continue to spread that knowledge and awareness into what you do today?
So a great question. So when I was working at CHOA in the emergency room, we would always have maybe once a week or once every other week, a new onset of a new diabetic that came into the emergency room, which was a child. It could be ranging from 5 to 18 or whatever. So what I would do is I would walk into the room and just, say who I am and say that I'm a diabetic and just tell them my story and tell them like what I go through and what they may go through. But granted, like, I was 35 when I got diagnosed. Like some of these kids are going to be dealing with diabetes a lot longer than I have. And, obviously with them growing up in puberty, it jacks up your sugars. But, I was just trying to help out as much as I can to let them know that everything's going to be okay. And they have a big supporting cast at Showa, and, they're very helpful there. And so one day there was this lady crying like outside of her room, and I thought like it looked like her daughter was dying. And so the way she was crying and everything. So I went up to the nurse and I was like, what's the deal with this room over here? And so they said, oh, she's a new diabetic now. Her blood sugar was in like the 700s. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I always typically go into new diabetics rooms and just say, just yell out like, hey, welcome to the club, just try to like cheer them up a little bit, because, obviously like, just finding out you're a diabetic can be scary, and you don't know what's going on, and it's super stressful. There's a lot of things going around in your head, and especially with the parents too as well. And so I walked into the 5-year-old and I was like, hey, welcome to the club. And she wanted like nothing to do with me. She was more focused with drinking water, which they didn't want her to. And so when I said it, the mom looks at me and like, and is looking at me like, the hell's wrong with you? And so I pretty much told her like, hey, I'm a type 1 diabetic as well, and told my story and said that, you're going to a floor where you're going to get so much help, and you're going to learn a lot, but it's a lot to take in, but everyone's super helpful with you, and they'll make sure you know what you're doing with your child with diabetes. And I said, listen, if you want to ask me any questions or whatnot, feel free just to have the nurse reach out to me, and I'll come back in and, we'll talk a little bit more, but I'm definitely going to be helping you transfer your daughter upstairs to the ICU. So just to kind of calm me down a little bit and relax you a little bit. And so when I did that, I reassured her again, saying, hey, listen, you're gonna be fine. You have the great staff here, and they're gonna help you out to the best of your ability. And she gave me a nice big hug, crying, saying thank you and stuff like that. And after that day, I felt like I needed to do a little bit more than going into like patients' rooms and that are new diabetics and saying, and just talking about my story. So I'm a big like fitness buff. Like I'm a personal trainer, and I like working out. I like wearing t-shirts. I don't really like wearing any like fancy shirts or anything. Just like t-shirts. And so I was like, well, why don't I actually make a t-shirt company that donates to a diabetes charity and make that a little bit, maybe that will help out and see what happens. And so I started this t-shirt company called Type 1 Lifting, and proceeds of the shirts go to the Children's Diabetes Foundation, they're based in Denver, and it originally started in 1977. And it's funny because like my wife and I, when we started the t-shirt company, the main focus was just to donate to a diabetes charity. And so I didn't know about the JDRF, like no clue when I first started. And so my wife and I Google searched diabetes charities, and, this one, pretty much Children's Diabetes Foundation was the first one. I was like, okay, I want to do that one. And so, and the staff there has been like super helpful. I emailed them. Originally, actually, I emailed Showa because they were the first people to find that I was a type 1 diabetic. And I emailed the donations department and got no response back. And so then that's when I started to get into the Children's Diabetes Foundation.
What a great story of just reassurance and empathy and spreading the knowledge that and your own personal story with others so that they can feel a part of something, right? Being diagnosed and it's kind of similar with me. So I was diagnosed and have muscular dystrophy when I was 8, 9-ish.
Yep.
And I showed symptoms very early on when I was about 4. But my mom and dad knew there was kind of something wrong with me. And I just remember receiving that news. It didn't really click in my head until later when puberty hit. And that's when walking started getting more and more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then the progression just continued to go on to now using a full-time wheelchair. And with that, I remember what it was like to feel very isolated and alone, and to know that there's that network. And I remember the first person that I reached out to, that I connected with, they were about 15 years older than I was, but it was the first person that was able to just say, hey, I have the same condition that you have. I understand what you're going through. It may be a little bit different. I had it very early on. They had it a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But just knowing that there was that support was so important. And it's really cool to hear what you're doing with the t-shirt company. And do you work at the hospital, sharing, like going into the different ER rooms?
No, I would love to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, like I stopped. So I was a orthopedic technician / like nursing assistant. And so I told myself a very, very long time ago, when I hit 40, I don't want to be a nursing assistant. And so nothing against being a nursing assistant. I just don't feel like there wasn't really room to grow, and going back to nursing school wasn't really an option, because I had a 2-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old, and another one on the way. So there was no chance for me to go back to school. So I was like, I definitely need to start doing something different. So
yeah, no doubt. Especially when you got little kiddos, it's hard to go back to school to do that.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit more about the Children's Diabetes Foundation. What are they up to?
So they have like clinical and educational programs with people with diabetes, and their main mission is to raise funds to support the Barbara Davis Center for Diabetes. And where they see, it's based in Denver, so they'll see like thousands of patients from all ages and all over the world. And their main focus is just to give people the finest like diabetes care available that they can. And so when I reached out to them, they, like I said before, were like super grateful, and they were like open arms. They're like, yeah, come on in. Like, we could definitely work something out together. And I've been with them for, like 3.5 years, and they're really supportive with me. And like, I help them out in any way. Like each year they have me help them out with their fitness month, their fitness magazine for the month, like their the bi-monthly magazine that they have. I do like a write-up about my story and what I've done and help them out. I've been in a couple of their blogs, so they're awesome.
I love to hear that, especially when you're taking your own passions that you have with lifting and then putting it back to benefit the whole mission. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and another thing is when I started the t-shirt company, I also wanted to show people that, even though I have this really crappy disease, diabetics can still do amazing things, even though, there's some times where I have high blood sugar and I can't work out, or I get low blood sugar, can't work out, and I have to like sit there and wait for my, blood sugar to come back up. So, I mean, it can be very frustrating.
Yeah, especially when you have those limitations. One thing that I always really like to ask people is, when we're thinking about the corporate environment, it doesn't have to be the corporate, it can be really any company or any business. How can businesses be more understanding and empathetic of those that have pre-existing conditions, disabilities, however you want to frame it? What would be some things that you would suggest to, say, an employer for your condition?
So right now, I still do the personal training stuff. And so when I was working at a gym, they knew right off the bat that I was a diabetic, because I would, I told them, I was like, hey, I'm a diabetic. I've told all my clients. And the personal training gym was, super helpful. And they were like, listen, if you need anything, let us know. If you get low, we have like, supplies for you just in case if you need it. And, if my clients, if I told my clients like, hey, listen, I have low blood sugar right now. I can't really train you to like right now for like the half an hour. I need to sit down and like eat something so I can raise my blood sugar up a little bit. I mean, everyone was okay with my disability, and even the full-time office job. I'm a recruiter too, so I've told them right off the bat. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm a diabetic. I believe there's one more. There used to be one more other diabetic, but he never really talked about it. But I told him, I'm like, listen, if this happens or this happens, just know that I need help or I need something. And and all my coworkers that started at the same time with me, they'll help me out if I need anything. If like I need to go, they need to go to the cafeteria to get like brownie or something just to spike my blood sugar up, or if I need to lower my blood sugar, just go out for a walk. If they'll come walk with me, just talk to me, or just anything to make it a little bit better for me.
Got it. So just to clarify, so when it gets low, having to eat something with sugar, is there anything in particular that does really well to get it back up really quickly, or is it really like any like cookie or brownie or anything with high dense sugar would be fine?
Yeah, I mean, I have I usually have like a pack of Smarties with me once in a while.
Nice.
But my go-to snack if I'm low is usually like a peanut butter sandwich. So I mean, it's easy to make and it's right there. But if I'm like by myself and there's like nothing around, I usually like eat some Smarties, or I have like Sour Patch Kids, or
oh, nice.
The best one is I actually have like cake frosting in my door. So just in case if I get low, I start like slamming that down, and it'll take me like a couple minutes to get my blood sugar up.
Nice. Hey, you gotta be prepared.
Yep, of course.
So yeah, having snacks around sounds like it's really key, and whether or not you carry those or not would be helpful in the time of crisis, that others can chime in and help out when needed. How do you alert people when it's getting so low or too high where you basically are almost non-functioning? Has it ever gotten that extreme?
No, knock on wood, I haven't had that
That's
happen to me. Haven't, like, the highest I've been was 600, and that was on vacation.
Oh,
I
wow.
woke up and I had like a piece of cheesecake or something like that, and I didn't dose my insulin properly, as the number says. And I was like, hey, listen, I told my wife, I'm like, I got to stay here and just take some insulin and just see what, like, when it'll go down. And then finally it decided to go down like after, I'd say like 2 hours. So, because you can't take a lot of insulin all at once. Well, for me, I don't take a lot of insulin all at once, because once you do that, you start bottoming out, and it's just like not good. And it's better just kind of doing a steady rate going down.
Got it. And then pumping insulin, and then you said going for a walk.
Yeah. So typically walks for me kind of help me lower my blood sugar a little bit. But I mean, I can get high blood sugar just from like lack of sleep, stressful situations, pretty much anything really. I mean, it's crazy, because like you think you'd be, you're feeling good, you slept good, nothing's wrong with you. Then all of a sudden your blood sugar spikes up, or, right before you go to bed, your hormones start kicking in, and then because the hormones want you to sleep, but you're not ready yet. And so it'll spike your blood sugar up too for that. Yeah. And even the dawn effect too, where your body around like, I think it's like 4 to 5, it's trying to wake up a little bit. So the hormones start kicking in. That's when a lot of diabetics see the, blood sugar spike in that too as well.
4 to 5 in the morning. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And that's usually like, you would wake up because of that?
No, I mean, you some people might, but I have like a continuous glucometer on me where if it hits a certain number, the alarm will start going off.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, it's called a Dexcom, and so it's you're supposed to put it on either on the back of your arm or your side abdominal, like your obliques. But for me, in working out, that's not really the best option for those two spots, because one, with the obliques, I wear a weight belt, so I don't want it to like tear off. And then in the back of my arm. I'm like really clumsy sometimes. I like to nick my arm, on the side of the wall. So I'm like, man, I can't put it there. So actually, one of the people I interviewed for my podcast, she does Olympic weightlifting, and she puts it right on her glute muscle. And so I was like, oh, all right, I'll try it out. And so I've been doing that ever since, and just switching sides. Like every 10 days, I have to switch out my my sensor, and so I just go from one side to the other, and it works fine. I mean, it's annoying because my meter went if the alarm starts going off when I get over 200, and so for me lately, I take insulin and it still doesn't go down, so I have to constantly take insulin. And so for like an hour or even longer, it takes a while for it to drop a little bit. And so the alarm would go off like every 15 minutes, and it's like super annoying, even when I'm sleeping too. So, it would go off, and so I had to take insulin, and then I lose the quality sleep that I need, and then that makes my blood sugar just go up again. So sometimes I have to like shut off the monitor because it's just like it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a friend in high school and in college who always, I felt like, was changing the type of monitor that she had.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a common thing where you're just trying out a bunch of different monitors to see which one works for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. Last year, my wife bought me a continuous glucometer off of eBay. And just to try it, it's called the Freestyle Libre. It's like this little, so if anybody sees it, it's like a little white disc that goes on like the back of someone's arm, and they have like a sensor on their phone or like a little monitor that they scan over their arm, and it tells you what your blood sugar is. And so I tried it, and I wasn't really a big fan of it because I would constantly, scan my arm like every 5 minutes, and it would still be like reading high, and I would take more insulin, and then I would bottom out. And if you look at the ranges, it looked like a roller coaster. It would go like really high up because I had to take, eat food just to get my blood sugar up, and then, realizing it's getting high again, then take insulin, and it would just go straight down again. And it was, I wasn't a big fan of it. And so I had the chance to try this Dexcom G6, and I was like, okay, I have to remember that I can't be focused on the screen all the time. And so, and just don't slam insulin right off the bat. Just kind of ease your way into it, and it'll slowly go down. Because with these continuous glucometers, they actually are injected into your muscle, and a lot of the other glucometers, they prick your finger, and that's like capillary blood. And so it's a lot quicker response, or a lot quicker reading, just pricking your finger compared to having a piece of copper wire in your muscle with like a reading. So it's like a 15-minute delay on it. But the good thing with these are you don't have to prick your finger like 10 times a day. It's just in there, and you just look at your phone or look at a monitor, and it just says, hey, okay, this is what your blood sugar is.
That's so nice. I'm sure the convenience factor of not having to prick your finger all the time, especially multiple times a day, or checking and checking and checking. So is that generally the most reliable way of doing it? What do you feel?
Well, usually pricking your fingers is most reliable, because sometimes towards the end of a 10-day span where like the sensor, you have to switch it out. So for me, what I've noticed, the last day, there would be like an hour gap where like it wouldn't read anything, because I guess the copper wire. Yeah. And so there were times like I would switch it out, and like I'd have to wait an hour. And so I'd have to prick my finger just to calibrate it, or, just to see where I actually am instead of looking at the monitor.
Mm-hmm. Got it. You're saying that there's a copper wire in there. So does that mean that it's magnetic, in that if you get too close to magnets, it can, okay.
No, it's not like that. It just, I guess the copper wire just is a lot better. It's a better like conduit for like all the readings, and it absorbs I don't really know the scientific stuff to it. Okay. I wish I did. I should know.
Got it. Now, this is so interesting to learn about your story and the different devices that you've used, the glucometers, and how they impact you. And so having to, you said the copper wire ones, you have to switch those out every 10 days because you have to change the sensor because it
Yeah.
goes bad or something.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's like a harness. So with the Dexcom, it's like a piece of like, it's like a battery. So it's like this little gray battery. And then you have this piece of tape with this like plastic harness that you have to insert this battery in. And so that's in the, where the harness is, that's where the copper wire is. And so what they do is you connect the battery. And so it's a Bluetooth wireless like device that goes right to your phone. You just like snap it on. And I usually, the piece of tape that goes around the harness, it's not the best tape. So I actually have like an extra, I bought it off of Amazon. It's like a piece of like waterproof tape that goes around the sensor just to get a more, the sensor be more secure on, my glute muscle or your arm. So like, just in case if you nick something or, you sit down wrong, it won't fall off or anything.
Nice. Technology has come such a far way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A far and long way.
Yeah, I mean, even insulin pumps have come a long way too. So my wife wants me to get on the insulin pump. I'm kind of a little hesitant on it, but I'm willing to try it. But just like, I've been so used to pens, and it's a certain price compared to getting a pump, which is an extra. It could be like an extra $1,000, and then the attachments and like all the insulin, that's like an extra cost for that too as well, including the continuous glucometer. So insurance doesn't pay for everything. Maybe for some people, but it didn't do it for me. So I had to pay like $300 for like 3 months, and that's not including my insulin, which is like I had to take 2 different insulins, like one for quick acting, which is usually when I wake up and eat something, and then I have one for long, like a longer lasting one when I go to sleep. And so, those aren't cheap either. So just like, that's another issue, is just like you have to pay for this money for me to live, but it's stressful on like the whole family's, cause I only make this amount of money, and we need to, I need to figure out a way to pay for all this stuff,
Mm-hmm. I think that could be another suggestion for companies, is looking at insurance plans. I mean, are there any insurance plans that you've seen that cover a good percentage of this? That could be a benefit.
Yeah. I mean, when I was working at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, like their insurance is great because it's a hospital, and usually hospital insurances are a lot better than anybody else because there's like more people. And obviously, the more people you have with the insurance company, the less, like, the cheaper it's going to be. So, like, I would get like, I think it was like $100 for like 3 boxes of 5 pens in each box, and it was like, oh, this is awesome. And now I'm getting 2 boxes for like 100, like for like 150, and it's just like, it just depends on what you have for insurance, really.
Right.
But I know most of the diabetic supply companies, I think they do like a payment plan, so they just go by like how much you make or what you're how much you make and what can you pay for, and they kind of like help you out with that. It's almost like college loans. They're saying like, hey, I can't afford this, so okay, let's try to make it that you can like do monthly payments.
Right. Well, that's smart that they have that, because not everyone can just drop hundreds and thousands of dollars to buy a good number of stock supplies to have that.
Yeah, I mean, there was one part one time, like last year, I think it was like January, when like my insurance kind of rolled over a little bit, and so it was like back to like zero for my my deductibles. And so I needed insulin, and so I called the like CVS and Publix, and I was like, hey, how much would it be if I get a 3-month supply of insulin? And they're like $1,300.
Oh,
and I was like,
my gosh,
what?
That's insane.
So I was like stressing out like the whole time, like I can't pay that. And so I was like looking at other options, and I was like super stressed out. But luckily my wife has this medication that she takes that within like once per month, like she gets it, and she already hits her deductible like by February. So
wow, okay.
yeah, I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that because not everyone does.
No.
One thing that I'm curious about is how did COVID affect you with accessing the resources that you need to survive? Like insulin and all your pumps and lancets and stuff.
Yeah, well, I got the continuous glucometer like during COVID, so just to try it out, and we're actually working from home right now because obviously there's not really, I don't really think there's much science behind diabetics and COVID, so I don't really want to test the waters of going back to work because we already had like 2 scares already, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, it's I don't want to get it and then all of a sudden like something really bad happens to me and it just ruins me because I'm a diabetic, so it's like it's not worth it. So I told work, I'm like, hey, I need to work from home because of this, and they completely understand, and they were super helpful about that too. So and even going out, I do go to the gym, but I try to stay away from like a lot of the people, and I make sure I clean everything, like anything that I'm going to be touching, like just wipe it down, and but I really don't go to that gym that often. I pretty much have a whole gym in my basement, so I just kind of work out down here, and I try not to, I would like to go out I would like to go out more, but it's not worth it. So right. I kind of pick and choose my battles when it comes to that.
Yeah, same with me. I've tried to stay pretty low key in terms of just staying in my house as much as possible. And then if I do go out, it's usually outside, like at the park or something, and not around people.
Yeah.
Staying far away.
So have you picked up a new hobby at all when you were doing during COVID?
So what's interesting is I launched the podcast before COVID, and it just was perfect because that became a great hobby.
Yep.
Being able to really spend a lot of time on it and learning about audio engineering and all kinds of production and sound equipment and all kinds of stuff. So I've definitely learned a lot. So it just happened to be the perfect timing to launch it, and then the world shut down. So
yeah. That's pretty much with me. I started podcasting in January, and my podcast is the Type 1 Lifting podcast, or you just say Type 1 Lifting podcast. And I started in, like I said before, January, and yeah, like that's my new hobby. I love doing podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for like 6-7 years. So before it was like really like big, and I pretty much when I started this. The Type 1 Lifting podcast, I was originally supposed to do it with 2 other guys from the gym, and it was going to be called like the CPB podcast, like competitive fitness, powerlifting, and bodybuilding podcast. But it's hard because during COVID, or even before that, like trying to schedule times for all 3 of us to meet at once, it's impossible. So I pretty much did the screw it, just do it. And I had this one girl that both of us follow each other. She's a Type 1 diabetic, and she does Olympic weightlifting, not the one that with the glucometer, but another one. She was actually doing a weightlifting competition in Georgia, and it was like a half hour away from where I live. And I was like, oh well,
how great.
Yeah, like my kids and my wife were away on vacation because I just started a new position, so I didn't have the vacation time yet. And so I was like sitting at home doing nothing, and I already had like the lapel mics and the app on my phone which I use, and I'm like, yeah. And so I just drove down there, watched her Olympic weightlifting competition, and then I went up to her and like congratulated her, and I was like, hey, you want to go to like Panera Bread and do a podcast with me? And so she's like, and like this is like
what?
Yeah, this is like the first time we actually met in person, and so like I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, sure. So we drove to Panera Bread. I got everything set up, and like both of us were super nervous because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I didn't really know like the app on my phone how it works that well, and so we're like kind of going about just talking about diabetes and like weightlifting and stuff like that, and and it works. And then I've met so many other diabetics from podcasting, just meeting new people, including yourself. So
Nice.
yeah, and that first podcast I ever did still is on the top 5 of most downloaded podcasts that I have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's insane.
Huge success.
Yeah.
I love having the podcast. I just meet so many new people and people from all different journeys and walks of life. And I love just listening to people's story and taking their vision for what the world should look like and is, and trying to adapt that and mold that into my life. So I think it's really cool. And then you just share these connections with people. And one thing that what I started doing is like a popcorn method, which I'll actually have you do. So once I finish interviewing you, then I'll ask you to share a friend or someone else who has a disability, and I interview them. So it's like this chain of people that knows other people who knows other people. So
okay, I've never done that before. I pretty much, for me, I'll like just reach out to people like through Instagram DM or something like that, and be
do
like,
a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Yes. It was difficult in the beginning because it was like, hey, I've literally had 2 episodes. I swear I'm legit.
Yeah. Well,
but then once you build the base, it helps.
Well, you know what's funny? What I've noticed is, a lot of people want to talk about themselves.
Oh, totally.
And so
love talking about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how like I reach out to people. I'm like, hey, I'm like pretty much like the show is about like pimping your brand and what you are. And so they're like all about it. And so, and I've met and I still talk to like pretty much all of the people I've interviewed. So it's awesome. I mean, even like I interview like non-diabetics, but pretty much like my whole podcast is like fitness related. So I'll interview like bodybuilders, I'll interview powerlifters, I'll interview like CrossFitters, like either non-diabetic or diabetic, and just kind of, listen to their story. And then I'll have like another episode during the week about like news in the fitness world, or in like including my diabetes, like week in diabetes kind of review, and just talk about like, what's going on with me, and just hopefully someone, listens to one of them and just gets a spark and, does something. Because there's a lot of diabetics that do not take good care of themselves. And I've seen it firsthand working at Showa, and it's like, it's sad. And even like before I was working at Showa, I met a lot of diabetics that were like, had missing feet because, they get neuropathy and their diabetes is not well managed, and they just start losing, circulation. Their foot starts dying off, or their fingers start dying off, and it's, it's sad. So
it's so sad.
Yeah, and one of the patients I had, I believe he was like in his 20s, and so he became a type 1 diabetic, I believe when he was, I think 17ish, and he was like really, really overweight, and so he realized that, oh, wait, I can get high blood sugar and just pee out my weight and just like, just urinate. Like, because like when you get high blood sugar, you typically go to the bathroom a lot.
Okay.
Like for me, when I was diagnosed, it was like almost, 4 or 5 times a night. And so what the people would do is, and that's how you lose the weight, because you just like peeing out like muscle and like all your sugars and all that stuff and ketones, and
right.
And so like this kid would go on like binges with like drinking a whole bottle of Mountain Dew and not taking insulin for like 2 days, and just like that's his way of losing weight. And there's other people like that have like diabetic anorexia, so they make themselves get high blood sugar so they can throw up.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's this. I follow one person that used to do that. They don't do it anymore, but like with the kid that I talked to at the hospital, where he would just like try to lose weight. I told him like, dude, you're gonna kill yourself like real quick, because I understand you're trying to lose weight, but this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, they try to take advantage of something to try and make something out of it. And that's just not a healthy way of managing your weight or just your organs. It's really bad for anyone to do that, diabetic or not. It's just,
and your kidneys can go like real quick. And it's like, and then you're gonna have to get on like blood pressure medication just so you can get your kidney functions going. So it's like a big mess. And it's sad to, like, usually people, when they realize like they did something wrong, it's like when it's too late.
Yeah. So one thing that I think about is the stimulus checks that are coming out, and to hear that in the beginning it was, only going to be $600, and then now they're trying to get that up to $2,000. And I saw on one of the representatives' Twitter was, what would $600 or what would $2,000 give you? Can you kind of put that into frame of reference in diabetes world?
Yeah, I mean, so if I didn't have insurance,
right? If you have no insurance.
Yeah, so like I said before, with the insulin, it'd be like $1,300 just for like 10 pens, which would probably last me maybe, I don't know, 2 months maybe. Just depending on what I eat. So maybe a month and a half, probably a month and a half. And that's not including my long-lasting insulin. That'd probably be like another $1,000. My diabetes supplies would actually, with the continuous glucometer, the Dexcom, I asked them before, without insurance, it was going to be like $2,000 for like a 3 month.
For 3 months, wow.
Yeah, and it's insane. Like the drug prices for insulin has gone up like astronomically. So from like 10 years ago, I believe a vial of insulin was $30, and now from like 10 years or 11 years now, it's up to $300.
Is there any reason for that? It's manufactured synthetically, right?
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's actually, Walmart sells another vial, which is like, I think, a human insulin or something like that. It's weird, but like it doesn't really work well, and some people have died off of it because it's like all you do is pay $25 for this vial of insulin, and it's not really, it's just like, it's not synthetic, and it's not like really quick acting. You really don't know like when your blood sugar is going to drop or whatnot. So it's like,
it sounds like an ethical issue.
Yeah, I agree. And it's crazy because like I saw this episode, it was on like ABC or something like that, where there's a girl that's like really well known in the diabetes space on social media. She and like a bunch of other people went across the border to Tijuana and pretty much got their insulin for like the whole year, and they paid probably like a fraction of what they would actually pay for it. Like, so I think they spent altogether like $8,000 or probably, something like that, for like a whole year supply. And that would cost them like, I think it was like $100,000 like across the border.
Wow.
Yeah.
So smuggling in insulin and other supplies.
Yep.
That sounds like it should be, it should be illegal, right?
Yeah.
Why do you have to go to another country? It's kind of, I guess it's just in terms of health regulations and how pharmaceutical companies, the cost that they put on and the price stamp that they put on whatever, supplies.
I did see something online. The reason why the drug prices are so high. Don't quote me on this. It was a long time ago when I saw this. So I believe the reason why is they have the drug manufacturer do the drugs, and they do like the trials. And once they get passed through, there's a middleman or middle group of people that approve. Like it's like another approval or whatnot, and then it goes to a third group. And so that's why it's so expensive. It's pretty much that middle person. That's the reason why like the drug prices are so high. And plus, diabetes medicines is so expensive. Why would they want to make it cheaper? Because we're one of like the biggest
revenue
like costs
streams
for them. Yeah, like you said, biggest revenue stream that like most of these drug companies have. And so why would they want to lose us if they want to drop the prices,
Right. kind of similar with thinking about, the COVID vaccine coming out. And there's two companies and they're making it free. And it's like, it took millions of dollars to make these vaccines, and to think that they're being free, it's, how are these companies getting paid for? And through other revenue streams and stuff, things like having people pay thousands of dollars every month on insulin and other things. So it's interesting to see just that dynamic of, you get some things, but other things are astronomically high, but are essential for living.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think the Operation Warp Speed kind of helped out, where like the government paid like millions and billions of dollars just to, get this thing going. So, I mean, which is good. I don't really get political, but I mean, I think that was a good idea. I mean, I don't know if I want to take the vaccination, because I don't know what it does with diabetics. So
that's a good thought and concern. I haven't finished reading the entire report, but because I wanted to know, and I had some friends ask me who also have muscular dystrophy. They're just like, has it been tested on muscular dystrophy patients? Because the types of treatment that they're coming out for my type of MD are mRNA based drugs. And so, I don't know. It'll be interesting if there's any information on that, or if you just kind of have to wait and see and let those others that want to be brave and take it first see what happens. But you're not going to know the long-term effects until, probably years later.
Well, yeah. I actually have a friend of mine. He works at a local hospital, like where I live. And so I was like, oh, did you get the vaccine? And he's a nurse, and he's like, no. And he's like, I'm like, wait, isn't it mandatory? And he's like, no, it's not FDA approved yet. So it's not approved by like some company. So it's not mandatory. And I was like, oh. And it's like, so if it was mandatory and someone got like really, really sick or something happened to them, like they can sue like the hospital because it was mandatory. But since it's not like, since it's not approved for something, that people don't have to take it.
Wow. I don't know. I've just been seeing lots of Instagram posts of my doctor friends and nurses, because I was pre-med in college. So, and I did not go pre-med. I work in tech, but seeing all of my friends from college, they're all getting their shots. And I'm like, yay, that's so exciting. I haven't heard anyone not want to get it. So,
yeah. It's interesting. Like you said, I'm looking to see, what it does for people with diabetes or, your disability, and to see how it really happens, how it really works. So
a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
We gotta just have to trust the all of the clinicians and the scientists and everyone that's creating it. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and learning all about your story of strength, and just talking about different kinds of accommodations and how COVID has impacted you, and what the cost of all of the materials that you need. It's just been really awesome to learn more about it. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. No, like I said before, like this is my first time I've been interviewed for a podcast. So I'm very grateful that I was able to be on your podcast and tell my story. And, I'm glad I actually reached out to you, especially from that podcast email that I usually get. And I saw your podcast, and I was like, oh, that'd be a great person to talk to, especially, with your disability. And so I reached out, and, I'm glad I did. So I got to meet someone new.
Right. Definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Bye, Tom.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you, friends, for listening. Please rate and follow this podcast, or text Carden at 470-588-1215 with comments and suggestions. Tune in next week for another disability topic.